Do you ever wonder what makes a life-changing history? Right, a solid mission of the visionaries. It was Dr. Anka and his colleagues' mission to accelerate technology development. Through the establishment of Institute Technology 10 November, their goodwill has encouraged ITS students to take important roles in both local and global communities. Ministers, CEOs, professors, entrepreneurs, and yes, another history maker. These successful alumni were trained in a healthy learning environment that was equipped with various supporting facilities. From vocation to marine technology, all faculties and departments of ITS were formed to be the best place to learn science, technology, and design. 7 faculties and 1 interdisciplinary school. Scientix, Faculty of Science and Data Analytics. MarTech, Faculty of Marine Technology. INSYS, Faculty of Industrial Technology and Systems Engineering. Electex, Faculty of Intelligent Electrical and Informatics Technology. CivPlan, Faculty of Civil, Planning, and Geoengineering. CreaBiz, Faculty of Creative Design and Digital Business. Vocation, Faculty of Vocational. And Interdisciplinary School of Management and Technology. Recognized as one of the top best-ranked institutes doesn't mean the finish line for ITS. To gain greater international recognition, ITS launched International Undergraduate Program. Students can get wider international exposure through 20 study programs they can apply. The chances are also open for professors from all over the world to teach and conduct research at ITS. These opportunities have made international joint research and other international activities successfully performed. Like IUP, students and lecturers from other programs have also contributed to the ITS achievements. Numerous appreciations earned exemplify Institute's excellent performance. But technology and academic excellence is not the only goal of the Institute. Students are guided to apply their knowledge for the welfare of society. Because to note a new life-changing history, technology must advance humanity. ITS, Institute Technology, 10 November. Do you ever wonder what makes a life-changing history? Right, a solid mission of the visionaries. It was Dr. Anka and his colleagues' mission to accelerate technology development. Through the establishment of Institute Technology 10 November, their goodwill has encouraged ITS students to take important roles in both local and global communities, ministers, CEOs, professors, entrepreneurs, and yes, another history maker. These successful alumni were trained in a healthy learning environment that was equipped with various supporting facilities. From vocation to marine technology, all faculties and departments of ITS were formed to be the best place to learn science, technology, and design. 7 faculties and 1 interdisciplinary school. Scientix, Faculty of Science and Data Analytics. MarTech, Faculty of Marine Technology. INSYS, Faculty of Industrial Technology and Systems Engineering. Electix, Faculty of Intelligent Electrical and Informatics Technology. CivPlan, Faculty of Civil, Planning and Geoengineering. CreaBiz, Faculty of Creative Design and Digital Business. Vocation, Faculty of Vocational. And Interdisciplinary School of Management and Technology. Recognized as one of the top best-ranked institutes doesn't mean the finish line for ITS. To gain greater international recognition, ITS launched International Undergraduate Program. Students can get wider international exposure through 20 study programs they can apply. The chances are also open for professors from all over the world to teach and conduct research at ITS. These opportunities have made international joint research and other international activities successfully performed. Like IUP, students and lecturers from other programs have also contributed to the ITS achievements. Numerous appreciations earned exemplify Institute's excellent performance. But technology and academic excellence is not the only goal of the Institute. Students are guided to apply their knowledge for the welfare of society. Because to note a new life-changing history, Technology must advance humanity. ITS, Institute Technology, 10 November.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we start commence the program, and here are the following webinar protocol. For each participant ID, please use your real name following with your origin of institution. All of participants are expected to mute the audio and only unmute the video during the event. We cordially invite you to take your own firm and comfort seat in your own room, and please avoid the backlight. Make sure that you have a good and stable internet connection. If you have an earphone or headset, we recommend you to use it so that your voice can clearly and loudly to be heard. During the Q&A discussion session, all participants, please use the chat box to deliver the questions. Thank you for your cooperation and consideration.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May God always bestow prosperity and health to all of us. Welcome to the guest lecture series on SDGs today, on Thursday, March 10, 2022. My name is Rainy and I am from ITS Global Engagement and will be your Master of Ceremony and as well as moderator for today. Today, our session will be with special speakers. I'd like to say hi firstly to Dr. Sharon Wilson from University Tunku Abdul Rahman. Hello, Dr. Sharon Wilson. Can you hear my voice?
Loud and clear, Rainy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for accepting our invitation to be speaker in GLS on SDG. And it is an honor for us to have you in GLS on SDGs. Okay, and I also like to say hello to Miss Lanifel Manalo from University of Batangas. Good afternoon, Miss Lanifel.
Hi, Rainy. Good afternoon.
How are you, Miss Lanifel?
Nervous and excited at the same time.
Okay, thank you, Miss Lanifel, for your valuable time to be with us today. And before we start our agenda, here's some technical rules for all participants. First, please adjust your name or ID screen using format name underscore campus. Second, during the lecture, please turn off your microphone and only turn on the microphone when the moderator gives the chance. Third, please fill your attendance at bit.ly/attendance _GLS. Our committee also sent the attendance link in the Zoom chat room. And for participants who wish to get an e-certificate and stamp for it, please fill the attendance 50 minutes after the session starts. And for participants who wish to ask questions during the Q&A session, please send your question at bit.ly/GLS_Q&A_1 and the link for the question listed in the chat room as well. Or you can ask directly by using the raise hand feature later. And today's GLS on SDGs will present two topics. The first one is entitled Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment that will be delivered by Dr. Sharon Wilson from University Tunku Abdul Rahman. And the second topic entitles Efforts of Local Government Units Philippines in the Attainment of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which will be delivered by Ms. Lanifel Manalo from University of Batangas. We will have both lecture first. Each lecture will be 45 minutes and then continue with the Q&A session, each speaker in 15 minutes. Now, before we proceed to the next agenda, let me introduce our first speaker. Dr. Sharon Wilson is an assistant professor at University Tunku Abdul Rahman, and she earned her PhD for Communication, Journalism, and Related Program in University Kebangsaan Malaysia. And she also got a Master of Art of Communication and Media Studies in University Sains Malaysia. And in 1999, she got Bachelor of Art for Translation and Interpretation University in University Sains Malaysia. Dr. Sharon Wilson also got Scholar of the Study of the United States Institutes or SUSI Journalism and Media program in 2013 at Ohio University, and a fellow of the Summer Institute for Asia Fellows in News Literacy program in Hong Kong. And in 2020, she received the first place in the International Communication Division teaching competition of the Association for Education in Journalism and Communication. Now, without further ado, let's invite Dr. Sharon Wilson to deliver her lecture. To Dr. Sharon Wilson, I am happy to pass the microphone to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Salam sejahtera dari Malaysia. Mabuhay to my friends in Philippines. I'm so glad to be here and to be able to share with you a very, very important topic today. And I would like to also take this opportunity to wish all the ladies in this virtual webinar happy International Women's Day. And I think when I'm going to give this lecture, I'm so honored to be talking about women and gender equality in my country, Malaysia, and what is going on in this country and how we can share and learn about the different aspects of gender equality. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today basically focuses on empowering women. In Bahasa Malaysia, we call it memperkasakan wanita, to empower women. And all the while, in this past couple of years, there was a study by the World Economic Forum that said that it takes 99.5 years to close the global gender gap. And that's a very long time, yeah? And the fact that there is still a gap between genders is still something that is worrying and something that is still being discussed is also very disturbing. There is this gap in between the genders, and the fact that we also have come up with a third gender makes it even more complex to study gender equality. So when we say gender inequality, which means that there are no equal opportunities between the genders. Now, every time we speak about gender equality, we always think about women only, which is not true, because when we say gender, we are referring not just to women, we are also referring to men. And today, because of social media, because of the global landscape that we live in, and also because of the pandemic, the inequalities have not just existed amongst women, but these inequalities have also existed not just with the third gender, but it has also existed among men. Okay, and while my lecture is going to talk about the inequalities among women, let us not forget that there are many others who are still struggling in this whole gender inequality discussion. So I want to show, as you're reading the slide now, I want to highlight that when it comes to gender gap among 153 countries, Malaysia is placed 104 globally. And this is not something that we are proud of. In fact, this is something that we should be embarrassed about. And I realize that Indonesia and Philippines and so on, we are not so far different than each other. And there's so many things that is being challenged in our countries and so many things that can be done to elevate the position of women and men in the country. Now, in Malaysia, the number of women holding senior leadership positions has hit 37% this year, which means when we say senior leadership, it includes not just the government, but also public and private sectors. So, and when I say senior leadership positions, it means positions where requires these leaders to make decision making. And decision making is a very important role because it means that their voices are being heard. And in Malaysia specifically, when it comes to in the political scenario, there are very few women who are holding this position of minister, of a higher ranking officer, where they can actually make changes to the system. And 6% of business in Malaysia had female chief managing officers, and especially chief marketing officers. And in this aspect, it is the highest level among Asian countries, but 6% is still very, very low. Beside the proportion of women in more traditional senior human resource roles, it has increased slightly, 54%, but again, it is just one industry. Now, I'm just giving you some background to understanding this gender inequality. Now, research has shown that Malaysian businesses, of course, are taking more positive action in their leadership, creating inclusive culture. We hear the word inclusive. What is to include? Okay, in any aspect of a business or of decision making, and we are trying to ensure equal access to developmental work opportunities, which is 48%, and providing mentoring and coaching skills. Although these things are existing in Malaysia, but we still feel that there are many fields which are dominated by a particular gender, and women are in some ways not allowed or not given the opportunity to go into that field. And if you notice, only 18% of the 43 highest positions in the government are filled by women. So 18% or even lesser today is still a very worrying number. It does not represent. Now, when I say it does not represent, it doesn't mean that it should be 50% men and 50% women. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is there must be some leeway, there must be some opportunity. Now, at the same time, some of you may be thinking, this is the concept of feminism. Let me just digress a little bit. And I want to just talk a little bit about what is this thing called feminism. I think a lot of people around the world are getting the concept of feminism wrong. When feminism started, let us remember that when feminism started, the concept of feminism was introduced because the women at that time in the Western world, they realized that they were unable to earn their own money, because whatever money that came with them as an asset from their families, from their fathers, automatically went to the husbands or the male heir to the family. And therefore, whatever that they needed to buy for themselves or take care themselves, the money didn't go to them. The money went to the male kin. Okay. Now, in the long run, the women had more say because the women had wanted to have more say. They wanted to have job. They wanted to feel like they owned something. All right. So what has happened? They went out to the streets. There was the suffrage movement. They protested because they felt that they could earn their own money as well. So the first thought of feminism came about with the concept of wanting to earn their own money, wanting to spend that money on themselves, and it had a lot to do with asset requirement. The second thing that is about feminism in the early days was the fact that when it came to jobs, so you earn wages, you earn salaries through having jobs, right? So you need to have a job. And these women, generally, most of them were not skilled enough to have a job. They could not, the ones who had an education or somewhat of an education were the upper classes. And so what happened was the lower classes, the women in the lower classes, they could go and work in factories and so on. So they were fighting for the ability to work, number one, to get a wage, number two. Number three, then they decided, I have elected officials and all these elected officials are men. My voice should be heard too. As a woman, I need to know who is my leader, right? And I'm putting it in very simple terms so that we all understand. So who is my leader? I should be allowed to vote for my leader because that leader is going to lead me. And so the voting process, the women fought for voting processes where their voice could be heard and they could elect their representatives. So that's the third element. The fourth element was the concept of healthcare. So the healthcare here was the fact that women at that time, this was in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, where women wanted to be empowered over their bodies. So physically, they needed to know that they could make a decision about their own bodies, about decisions about the legalities behind their own bodies, and have a say because the body belongs to them. Okay. So these were some of the aspects of what feminism was all about. Feminism was driven through the decision-making of these four main aspects. So education, wage, decision-making, representation or voting, and healthcare. Now, everything else today has been hyped up. Okay. The fact that, and I say this very controversially, that a lot of women also go around saying, I'm a feminist. Now, not all of us are feminists. Feminism, like I said, this is the core ideas of feminism. And the fact that you are fighting to have equal opportunity in education, in healthcare, in the industry, that is a right that you have. That is what we call gender equality, that you have the same amount of education, the same opportunity for education, for healthcare, for work, paid work as men. Now, everything else, social media has highly exaggerated. Okay, I feel personally that everything else has been exaggerated. For instance, the right to change a light bulb, the right to pay for my meals. So there has been very unequal discussions about feminism. There are a lot of liberal feminists, okay, which means women who fight for this empowerment, equal opportunity, and so on. Then I feel you have the extreme feminism, of course, the women who feel that marriage is is a patriarchal system, part of patriarchy that prevents you from having freedom and so on. That's the more radical feminism. Then you have all the other things that are on social media today, which are justification of the justification of unequal opportunity. So when you say unequal opportunity here, and I'm discussing this very fluidly with you, the fact that when we say unequal opportunity and so on, when I'll give you an example to this. So today we find that young people go out and perhaps have a date, for instance. Yeah. So a woman wants to be asked out by a man, for example, and when she goes on this date, she expects the man to pay for it. Now, the backstory is she wants to be equal, she wants to be independent, but then when it comes to these kinds of things, there is this traditional conservative element to it. So that is just a simple example of unequal opportunity or unequal discussion, because it's not fair, isn't it? You demand to be treated independently, you feel that you're empowered, but at the same time you demand. So feminism, where it is convenient, is wrong. I strongly feel that feminism for convenience is wrong. That means you only use feminism when it is convenient to you, when it is convenient to the situation. So like I said, if you are thinking of feminism and empowering women and so on and being equal, you must understand the concept of it and not just take everything and anything as feminism or equality and so on and so forth. So because of this, and because of this discussion, let us get the idea around equality correct, okay? And let us get the concept of feminism correct. The whole idea of this discussion is the fact that feminism has to do with the core principles, the necessities that would put men and women at an equal competitive edge, which means if a man goes for a job interview, likewise for a woman who goes for the same job interview, they should be equally given the opportunity to compete for that job, not because of their gender, but because of their skills and trainings. Likewise, if it's healthcare or if it is, promotions, having promotions in a company, they should be given equal opportunity with each other, and there should be that competition rather than looking at whether a man can do it more, or that is the most superficial discussion rather than the depth that we are looking at. So when we look at gender equality here, we must understand the basic concepts of gender equality. And, when we talk about gender equality here also, we need to recognize it in the family. For instance, there is this, let us be very frank to say that we live in an Asian community that practices the patriarchal system, where the male-dominated ideas are in the forefront of any Asian family. And that is something that is difficult to shed. Because in a lot of our countries, the patriarchal system has been absorbed into decision making, into religion, into economy, into cultural practices, and so on and so forth. So it's very difficult to break away from the patriarchal system, because the patriarchal system goes back hundreds and thousands of years. Nevertheless, there are some things that have changed because of evolution and because of this pandemic that we are living in. So if you look at the COVID pandemic, the past 2 years that we've been going through it, we realize that the fact that, prior to the pandemic, a lot of women would be staying put at home, taking care of their children, and there's this imbalance in work-life situation. Now we find that when the man in a family who seems to be the breadwinner has lost his job because of the pandemic, we find that the women have now taken one step forward, and these women have maybe started a cottage industry, like making cakes or doing home businesses like sewing and making some handicraft, or even giving more advanced levels of online lessons or online training or tuition, or accounts, managing the accounts of someone, or being consultants. So they have come forward to take on that role, and you see this very prominently during the pandemic in all our countries. Okay, and so lately also in Malaysia there is this with International Women's Day, the focus here of where work-life balance have been a questionable discussion. It's been discussed over and over with nothing much to be done, because we find that a lot of women, we work, and then we also, so we have paid work and unpaid work, right? So paid work is when you go out, you work in a company, you get paid for it. But when you come back home, you do unpaid work, which is you are also a domestic engineer. You take care of the laundry in the house, and you cook. You are also a driver or chauffeur for your children if they want to go somewhere. You do, all the work at home, and that's unpaid work, yeah. And that is something that hasn't been recognized, and research have been going on about it. So these are some things which still are in the imbalance, or when we say gender inequality, that has been still existent. And I think that has related a lot with the patriarchal system that we are living in an Asian country, where it is still unacceptable for men to stay home and take care of their family, and women only to go out. Nevertheless, there have been a compromise where men and women go out and work, but still when it comes to unpaid work at home, there is still an imbalance where the women still have to carry the load. With that said, there is also the concept of negative elements that tie up with this gender equality. And in Malaysia, we see this rising as well during the pandemic, where there is something called the power struggle, control and power in a domestic setting, where because of the pandemic in Malaysia, a lot of women have been, and men, of course, in the family, they have been staying home. They are disallowed from going out because of government regulation and so on. So what has happened here is we see a lot of domestic violence, where because men and women are at home and in a small space, for example, we find that domestic violence cases have also increased, because the women do not go out, or the men do not go out, and so that time spent away is not existent. So when they are at home, we find that there is also this power and control struggle going on, and we find that being, as I said, being in a patriarchal system, the men want to feel they have control, they have power over the family. And so the idea of domestic violence is existent when they lose their jobs, or they they are, because they are not allowed to go out. So there is the stress of living in the four walls of the home, not being able to function like normally because of the pandemic. So these are all the things that have been going on, and I'm just putting them all in a nutshell to give you an idea of some of the problems that is occurring, that makes it seem the fact that as much as we want women to be empowered, there are still these challenges that exist, which in some ways are slowly changing, but the change is extremely slow. It will take a long time. Unlike some Scandinavian countries, if you look at Sweden, Denmark, Finland, these countries, there is a very there are programs, and there are a lot of projects that the government have done to instill gender equality in these countries, and they have successfully adopted some programs where women can be assimilated into the workplace, and likewise with men as well, and a lot of different opportunities. Now, when we speak about gender equality here, we are referring to ending the discrimination against women and girls. And that is something that is a basic human right for all women and girls. And it is very important if we are to achieve a sustainable future. And the empowerment of women and girls, what happens here is, so when we say empowering women and girls, what does it mean, the word empowering? It means that you give them the power to do something. And what is that something? That power to do something is to give them the power, the skills, the training, the education, to so that the power that they have, the skills, the knowledge, the information can be used to positively make an impact on the economy. I'll give you a simple example to this. In Africa, there is a small village the village is predominantly women. They are all women, and they do a lot of activities. They have a lot of cottage industry kind of businesses. They make beads. They make weavings of some kind, like scarves and so on, and they sell to the tourists. The reason these women come together is because a majority of these women are victims of or survivors of domestic violence. And so they've come away from their homes to live in this village. And the village elders are all made up of women. And so what is done in this village is these women who come away, quote unquote, run away from their domestic environment because of the abuse, they are given training, they're given skills, they are given knowledge, they're given information to uplift themselves, to upgrade themselves, And so what has happened here is they have a skill, they are taught a skill, and they use the skill to start a small business where they actually get some amount of salary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you must remember that having a wage, having a salary is a big deal for a lot of women in a lot of different countries. And the reason for that is because having money, having financial independence allows a woman to stabilize herself in the economic landscape. That means she can earn money to buy groceries for herself and her children, for example, or she could buy a car, or she could buy a house. So these are assets that are accumulated, which is then sustainable for her future. That happens a lot in big cities, urban settings, where being financially independent, so that is why we see a lot of women going to the cities to get a job and so on. Now, the challenge today is women in small rural areas, they come to the city because they want financial independence. So they get a job, they get a salary. The challenge for big city, women in big cities, and please do share your thoughts on this in the chat box. The women in big cities, their biggest challenge is not issues relating to concrete things. It's not about assets. It's no longer about a job. It's no longer about owning a car or owning a house. It is a lot to do with things you cannot see, abstract things you cannot see. For example, confidence, self-esteem, knowledge or information. So you see that these are the two things which differentiates women in rural areas and women in the city. And that happens a lot in Malaysia. From a study that I've done with my colleagues, we see this quite prominently, to say that, women in the rural areas, they move away, or they move to the urban areas to get better jobs and to be financially independent, whereas the women in the cities, they want to be more empowered, information wise or knowledge wise, or it has to do a lot of the times it has to do with internal struggles, like being emotionally stable, or being mentally stable, to be strong, to encounter everyday struggles. So from 1975 to 85, the United Nations considers this the decade for women. and it focused on policies and issues that impacted women, like I said, such as pay equity, gendered violence, land holding, and other human rights. I just read an article the other day that in many countries there are still issues on reproductive health being an issue for women, where they are not allowed to have control over their bodies. Likewise, with genital mutilation is still something that is still a problem in many countries, even though we are moving technologically, we are advancing, and so on. Now, today we have something called gender mainstreaming, where as much as women's existence should be naturally seen, the advancement of women and the achievement of equality with men are matters that are now fundamental with human rights. You cannot now see gender equality as women's issues or men's issues. It is something that is human rights. Everyone, immaterial if you're men or women, have to be given equal rights to healthcare, education, the workspace, as well as social justice as well. Yeah. So the fact that people play certain gendered roles, and as I said earlier, we live in a patriarchal system where there is this division of gender roles. Men is for outside work, women for inside work. Men is for executive job, women is for supportive jobs. Of course, now with the pandemic in these past 2 years, we have seen these roles change, which is a positive thing, because men and women need to equally complement each other rather than looking at them separately. They need to complement each other so that the country, whatever country you belong to, becomes economically sound, physically sound. The society does not break down. It is functional, and of course, family institutions also become stronger. So when we say what kind of inequality in the society, today still we see these problems. Women's income is often less than men. Women have less work opportunity than men. Women have less opportunity to get higher rank in societies, which is what I have said. Women often have to do more housework or reproductive work than men, or unpaid work than men as well. So this division of labor is something that is still being struggled with in homes. Like I said, we come from a very traditional Asian communities, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and other countries that are watching right now. If you come from the Southeast Asian or Asian region, we have a lot of different ideas of divisions of labor in terms of gender in comparison to Western ideas. So, like I said, when we talk about unpaid work or paid work, unpaid work is uncompensated, unrecognized in a capitalist system. So, unpaid work, as you know, your moms or grandmothers, my mom, for example, my grandmothers, for example, are all maybe if they are not working in the capitalist system or contributing to the capitalist system, they are working in an unpaid job, and they are not compensated for it. Yeah. So I guess this is just general knowledge that women generally are biological. They are seen as childbearers, and there is a social reproduction. There is a weight on their shoulders to reproduce and also to contribute to society in that sense. And through modernization and industrialization, unpaid housework has become isolated from paid work. And we see this more during the pandemic. Yeah. So women's participation in productive activities was a necessary precondition for her emancipation. So to be free, she has to participate in productive activities. And many women carry the burden of both reproductive and productive tasks. Now, what happens here in Malaysia is there was a study done by Women's Aid Organization, and the WAO wanted to find out whether gender equality or inequality was accepted by the population of Malaysia. And we found, or rather they found, that 46.3% of the population, they had attitudes that opposed gender inequality. So 46%, 46.3%, they oppose gender equality. That's a wonderful thing, right? But 45.7%, so it's half to half, 45.7% had attitudes that supported gender inequality, which means they supported the fact that, perhaps in their mindset, they felt that women should stay home and should go to work, for example. So there was this, there are still people who supported this gender inequality in Malaysia. And the responses you can see here, it comes to both violence as well as decision making. So if you look at the fourth line, undermining women's independence and decision making in private life, undermining women's independence and decision making in public life, and denying gender inequality is a problem. If you calculate the entire percentage, it is very, very high. Basically, it means that the Malaysian population that has been surveyed find that they are not supportive of gender equality. That is basically what it means. So this is something that is very scary. But nevertheless, there is a point here where it shows that the ones who are surveyed, who are interviewed, are above the age of 45, which means there is still a chance that the younger generation can still be exposed to the openness of gender equality. And you being in this lecture is a good testament that you are open and you want to see some change. So Malaysians, they feel that gender inequality is a problem. Some of them feel that way. Malaysians who think that many women exaggerate how unequal they are treated in Malaysia. So some people feel that the women in Malaysia are exaggerating, that they are not equally treated. So 30.9% say that they feel that way. 26.8% of Malaysians think many women wrongly interpret words or actions that are innocent. So which means if in a workplace the women are sexually harassed, these people that were surveyed, they think that the women are just wrongly interpreting those words. And 23.8% Malaysians think that discrimination against women is no longer a problem in workplace, whereas in reality it is still a problem, and it is a growing problem because it is not just workplace harassment, but it is also online harassment. With social media now, you have online harassment, and sexual harassment doesn't just happen face to face, it also happens online. And therefore in Malaysia, the government is still discussing tabling this anti-sexual harassment bill. We don't know when it's going to be approved and when it's going to be implemented, but it is still being discussed. So like I said, gender gaps in employment is still there, and the fact that there must be some education or lifelong learning programs for women to take part in, so that the gender gap is it gets closer and it's not widened by that whole idea. Also, the fact that there are some things that can be done to implement equality in any way. One example is to have these kinds of talks and discussions among your students. So it is not just to empower women with the knowledge and information, but it is also to empower men, your male students, your male staff, in your workplace to teach them to be better human beings. So it must be a complement between male and female. Yeah, it's not just teaching the men how to treat women, but it's also to treat women, to teach women how to treat men and how to work alongside each other so that they complement each other. I always have, I hear this a lot from my students as well, where there is a loop-sided inequality. Yeah? We tend to focus a lot on the women, but we also need to teach men how to become allies with women. So if it's reproductive health, or if it is work landscape, yeah. So we need to also teach men how to react, how to deal with these things. And so these conversations are very important. And I suggest you, my recommendation for all the universities, or whoever is listening to this, is to have open conversations. As you know, a lot of these gender inequality issues are not openly discussed in a lot of Asian countries. It is considered taboo, or in Bahasa Malaysia, we say pantang, to be discussed. And so we need to discuss this openly so that people are comfortable discussing these difficult issues. And when they are comfortable discussing these issues, it's no longer seen as something sensitive or something that is taboo anymore. And when we have these discussions, we learn from each other, and we learn how we can implement a good system that is equal for all men and women and others as well, so that they can be incorporated into lifelong learning and so on, so that it also contributes back to our country's economy and betterment of society. With that said, I will end here. If you have any questions you would like to ask or comments, feel free to ask. I thank you very much for having me here. It is always a pleasure to talk about these issues that we are all facing in our own countries. Thank you very much, and over to you, Rainy.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sharon Wilson, for the great presentation about gender equality. And I enlightened one thing, that we have to complete each other, not to dominate each other. Okay, before I read the question in the form, I invite the students or participants who want to ask directly to Dr. Sharon Wilson. You may to use a raise hand feature. Is anyone to ask direction? Okay, one is Mas Ahmad Nazala. Okay.
Okay, thank you for giving me an opportunity to ask. As we know that the gender equality is necessary and very important for both genders, and it is crucial for sustainable future. And I want to ask, is that gender equality will be solved on all places, on all aspects? Like there is some jobs and places in which men to women ratio is very high. Like most people on the streets are men, most people in prisons are men, most people in mining are men, most people, construction workers are men, most victims of violent crimes are men, and most people who commit suicide are men. So will the gender inequality in those places will ever be solved? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. That's a really good question, and it's not just a good question. It's a very difficult question because, like I said, we live in a patriarchal system, and because patriarchy did not exist yesterday. It exists hundreds and hundreds of years, and we all come from countries with long traditions, with long if you are, and I say this, if you are Indonesian and you come from Indonesia, you have a very long civilization and long history, and so it is very difficult to actually change that overnight. Nevertheless, there are some small things that can be changed. I totally agree that there are industries where men are dominant. For example, construction. Yeah. Mining, yes, definitely. Even if you look at crimes that are committed, a majority of crimes committed and inmates in prison are men. True. But when it comes to crimes, there is a lot of other variables that are involved. It's not just gender alone. It is the psychology behind it, as well as other elements. And it goes back to, again, it goes back to reproductive work or work that is being paid for and not paid for. It's a different discussion altogether, which is, we don't have time for that. But nevertheless, when it comes to male dominated jobs, for example, like construction and mining and what you said, yes, in a lot of Asian countries, and I've seen this with my own eyes, a majority of them have is dominated by males. The reason for that is because when we talk about gender, we are talking about social constructions of how a male and female should be. When it comes to heavy lifting or anything to do with physical aspect of jobs, it has a lot to do with the biological background of male and female. So the biological background of male and female is generally, we look at sex meaning the biology behind it, right? So men are generally made as physically able, physically stronger than the physique of a woman. So when it comes to jobs like this, like construction and so on, they always tend to employ men than women. Okay, with that said, there are countries where they do employ women to work in construction. For example, in Vietnam, in India, for example, there are women who also work in construction, building, and so on. Yes, even in mining in the US, there are history to show even now that women also go down to the mines. But it is not a popular job amongst women in Asia. Not all Asian countries. Some Asian countries do accept women working in construction, yes, but it is not a popular job that is taken up by women, and it's the sole reason for that is the biological makeup. Okay, so when you talk about jobs that are very dominant of male than females, it most times it will be a physically challenging job. But you still see women now going into construction and in engineering, oil rigs. You see them on oil rigs and so on. You see quite a number of women going into this. It may not be very popular, but you now see more women going into that than men. I hope that has answered your question, Ahmad.
Yeah. So in conclusion, the gender equality is actually limited to the biology, right?
Yeah. In especially in terms of job where it's physical job. And we can even use the same concept and explain it the other way. For example, why is it that before nurses, okay, juru rawat, nurses in hospitals, they majority of them were women. Where were the men? But today you see more men as nurses. Yeah. So you see the other way as well, not just the men in construction, the women not in construction, but we see the men before being in female dominated jobs like teachers, nurses, caregivers. Those kinds of jobs were previously dominated by women. Now you see more men going in. So it's quite interesting to see this evolution. And give it a few years, maybe we see more women in heavy jobs. Heavy jobs.
Okay, I hope that answer your question, Ahmad Nazala.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay, because I read in the question link, there's a lot of question, but Dr. Sharon have a limited time. So Dr. Sharon, how about one more question?
Sure.
Okay, I invite the question Miss Aulia Harumi Baharisa. Do you want to ask directly or I have Do you want me to read your questions? Okay, I will read the question for. Actually, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 another
Oh,
question
wow.
actually, and 6.
Oh,
Now
wow.
it's 6. Okay, but I have to choose just one. I'm so
Okay.
sorry before. Dr. Sharon Wilson,
Yeah.
what do you think about double standard in our daily life in terms of gender equality?
How much time do we have?
Actually, 4 minutes for you.
Okay. Oh dear. Wow. Now I have a lot to say with gender equality, inequality in our everyday life. Like I said, I have a different concept to inequality. I think when we say gender inequality, we are not just talking about men, women. Please don't think that when you say gender equality, it's just men and women. Oh, women, they are sidelined because of the men are there. But it also happens amongst women. Okay, so which means that when a woman is promoted to a higher position in a job, a lot of times the subordinates who are women, they may not be promoted just because the person up, the boss is a female. So there is an issue like that as well. The reason for that is because we, like I said, we live in a patriarchal system. When a woman is promoted to a higher level, she is sitting in a position that was previously dominated by a male. And so the mindset is very masculine. Okay, studies have shown that as well. So what happens here is the concept is the idea among all women is, if my boss is a woman, I will get promoted. But it's not the case. What happens here is you will find that the woman who is the boss will judge another woman based on how a man would judge another woman. And I know this is very controversial, but this is what is happening in the current scenario. So we find that there is an issue, not just men and women, but among women as well. The second concept is something called queen bee syndrome. So this queen bee syndrome, or in Malaysia, we call it syndrome permaisuri lebah. Okay, so queen bee syndrome here means that they take on the dominant role, and what happens in the workplace is they control the setting. So women control the setting. They decide how other women are going to be placed in the workplace. And and this is a growing problem in the world today, where the argument, the inequality here is not just women and men, it is also amongst women. The competition is amongst women. So there is going to be a lot of challenges for women in the workplace to get promoted, to move up, to succeed, to have a voice. It's going to be very difficult today. And I think with social media, with all that is happening today, with the pandemic, it is going to be even more challenging. I can speak more to the person who asked this question. I wish I had more time to speak about it. I'm sorry. Maybe another day, another time. But thank you for the question. Over to you, Rainy.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sharon Wilson, to share your thought about the question that asked by participants. But unfortunately, the time is limited. So I invite you, let's give a warm applause with the click reaction button on your device. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you very
Sharon.
much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sharon Wilson, for the excellent lecture for today.
Terima kasih banyak-banyak ya.
Sama-sama. And furthermore, we would like to present a certificate awarding to Dr. Sharon Wilson today.
Thank you.
And this is the certificate for Dr. Sharon Wilson.
Thank you very much. Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
We will send it we will send the soft file version of the certificate the sooner in the future, and we will also send it to your postal address.
Wonderful.
Once again, thank you very much, Dr.
Thank
Sharon
you.
Wilson, and please stay safe as always.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, now we proceed for the next agenda, a lecture by Ms. Lanifel Manalo from University of Batangas that entitled of efforts of local government units in Philippines in the attainment of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And now without further ado, let's invite Ms. Lanifel Manalo to give the lecture. So, Ms. Lanifel Manalo, I
Hi,
will
Ruby.
happy
Good
to share.
afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. And Ms. Lanifel Manalo, I will happy to give the virtual microphone to you.
Thank you, Rainy, to everyone who's with us this afternoon. Salamat, sayang. Magandang hapon. Good afternoon. I am very much honored to be able to have a participation in this very important lecture regarding the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. My topic will be focusing on the efforts of the local government units in the Philippines in the attainment of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I am here representing my beloved school, University of Batangas. To all the Batangueños watching us, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. So without further ado, let's have first an overview of what we are going to be hearing and listening and hopefully learning from this afternoon's lecture. It will be a three-part lecture. First would be a quick recap of the Sustainable Development Goals of UN, and then the implementation mechanism of SDGs in the Philippines, specifically the national government, and then we will go one by one with our third part, which is on the mandates and efforts of the LGUs in the attainment of Philippine development plans, as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. For this lecture, the following are the learning outcomes. One, to recall the basic facts and features of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. To discover the implementation mechanism of the sustainable goals in the Philippines. And third, recognize the mandates and efforts of the LGUs in the attainment of PDPs and SDGs. So let's get on with the presentation. So the first part is understanding the Sustainable Development Goals. We were informed that our attendees this afternoon are very much equipped with sufficient knowledge regarding the SDGs. However, to review some quick facts about it, let's have the following. So as we all know, the global goals are contained of 17 sustainable development goals and are a set of 17 integrated and interrelated goals to end poverty, protect the planet, ensure that humanity enjoys peace and prosperity by 2030. So in 2015, the United Nations revamped the framework of the Millennium Development Goals by introducing the Sustainable Development Goals during the celebration of the organization's 70th anniversary. So in here, the SDGs, or the newly founded Sustainable Development Goals, tries to address the unfinished agenda of the MDGs and stress sustainable development as well as partnership. So there are several things that sets apart SDGs from MDGs. One is that MDGs, or Millennium Development Goals, tend to target developing countries only. So it left behind yung the poor, middle, and rich countries, which the SDGs tend to be concerned about and tend to cater to. Then another difference is that MDGs is composed of only 8 goals 18 targets, and 48 indicators. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals, or the Agenda 2030, has 17 global goals, 169 targets, and 232 indicators. These 17 goals center on 5 pillars, which are collectively known as the 5 Ps. These are people, which pertains specifically to goals 1 to 5. You have planet, pertaining to goals 6, 12 to 15, and prosperity pertaining to goals 7 to 10, and you have peace pertaining to goal 16, and partnership pertaining to goal 17. Another thing that sets apart SDGs from MDGs is that SDGs are nationally owned and are country-led, wherein countries are given freedom to establish their own national framework in achieving the SDGs. Unlike before, it is not country-led, or it is not centered among and within countries. So now countries are given freedom to be able to draft a framework as well as plans for them to be able to attain the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, on to if the question now would be, how would countries be able to formulate their own plans? Will there be help coming from the United Nations, since we say that SDGs are nationally owned? Does UN provide support among its member states? So the answer would be yes. In the Philippines, the UN is a staunch partner of the government in achieving national development goals and the 2030 agenda, including the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We have the partnership framework for sustainable development here in the Philippines. So this one is a 4-year plan. It's a plan from 2019 to 2023, and it is the first Philippines as well as UN country plan that redefines the United Nations system engagement in the Philippines. It is a call for a greater coherence and efficiency in the mode of UN system engagement. So basically, this PFSD supports the national long-term vision and maps directly and indirectly into the Philippine Development Plan priorities, organizing its strategic contributions through a 2030 agenda lens into 3 pillars. You have people, prosperity, and planet, and we have peace. Now, in our country, fundamentally and constitutionally speaking, we adheres to the generally accepted principles of the international organizations where we would submit ourselves to become members of. And so with that, we are able to appreciate all kinds of help specifically intended for the attainment of sustainable development. So in this case, the UN extended help through the formulation of this partnership framework for sustainable development, envisioning what would be the goals, what would be the steps, and what would be the framework in ensuring that the country is guided in attaining these sustainable goals. Now, in the implementation mechanism of these sustainable development goals in the Philippines, the President in 2017 issued Executive Order 27. This is entitled Directing All Government Agencies and Instrumentalities, including local government units, to implement the Philippine Development Plan and Public Investment Program for the period of 2017, which mandates the following as the basis for the crafting of the Philippine Development Plan. So we have 3 bases to draft the LGUs, or the local government units plans, that should be aligned to the Philippine Development Plans. One is the Ambition Natin 2040. Ambition, or the vision, or the ambitioner goals, serves as the strategic roadmap of every administrative term. So it is crafted by NEDA, or the National Economic and Development Authority, with consultation from different agencies of government and other non-government stakeholders. Then another basis for crafting the Philippine Development Plan is the President's 0+10 point socio-economic agenda. So this one is also consistent with the Sustainable Development Goals. This gives emphasis on regional as well as subnational equality and the improvement of the access to services at the rural areas that is coherent with the Sustainable Development Goals core tenet of leaving no one behind. In this 0 plus 10 point socioeconomic agenda of the President, it tries to ensure that the delivery of services as well as goods in urban areas are also felt and are delivered within different rural areas. So in here, they enumerate processes, they enumerate programs as well on how to ensure that inequality will be able to be addressed in terms of socioeconomic institutions or socioeconomic concerns. And then the last would be, of course, the SDGs or the United Nations Resolution number 70/1 or the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I'm giving you the overview of how it is deducted from the umbrella of the international organization down to the a national level and then down to our local government units, so that we can deduct the processes on how we try to tide our goals, our plans in attaining the sustainable development goals. Now, the National Development Plan framework tries to present to us the mechanics or the foundation on how the plans will be catered to and will be complied by different government agencies as well as organizations. Now, Ambition 2040 or the vision is for the country to experience a matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay, or one that is strongly rooted, that is matatag, maginhawa which is convenient or comfortable life, and we have panatag na buhay which means secured, meaning the country gears toward being able to have a strongly rooted, a comfortable and a secured living. So this will be able to be achieved if it will lay down the foundation for inclusive growth, a high trust society, and a globally competitive knowledge economy. Now, this is divided into 3 categories. One is malasakit, pagbabago is the second, and third is patuloy na pag-unlad. Malasakit is concerned, pagbabago is reform or transformation, and patuloy na pag-unlad is continuous progress or increasing growth. So you will see on this next slide how this National Development Plan framework is tied with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So you see their goals from 1 to 17 being planned out or mapped out of the National Development Plan framework of the Philippines. So at the end of 2022, many Filipinos are dreaming to achieve the vision, which is to have a strongly rooted, comfortable, and secured life. And this is how or where the hierarchy of plans in the Philippines matter. So in the Philippines, we have a unitary form of government. I believe in Indonesia, LGUs are given semi-autonomous status. In the Philippines, we experience local autonomy where local government units are given the freedom or independence to be able to make programs as well as plans, but should be in association or in line with those of the national government, being a unitary form in terms of the relationship of the central government and the local government. Hence, we have this hierarchy. So let's have first the vertical linkage. Yung vertical linkage, you will see here at the national level, we have the long-term national physical framework plan, which guides the overall physical or land use planning in the country. So when we talk of the vertical, if you look at this physical, you have the national plan or framework plan, you have the regional framework plan, and then you have the provincial development and physical framework plan, and then you have the municipal and city. So the national is the central government, and then down to regional, provinces, and municipalities. Those are our other political subdivisions. So this is how the levels of plans and programs are cascaded down to the local government units. Again, from national to regional offices, then you have provinces, and then you have municipalities as well as cities. And for horizontal linkage, meaning if you are going to consider the first line, the physical or land use plans are implemented through socio-economic development plans at the 4 levels or layers, which are further operationalized into agency plans and programs. The programs and projects derived from the development plans are the basis for a multi-year investment programs. Now, in this case, everything that is within the investment plans should be also reflected in socio-economic plans as well as physical plans. No physical plans may be able to implemented without it being reflected to the investment plans. So this one, PPIP here pertains to Philippine Investment Plan. RDIP here is Regional Development Investment Plan. PDIP is Provincial Development Investment Plan or Annual Investment Plan. Similarly, this is Municipal or City Development Investment Plan. In the again, in the horizontal linkage, no plans, projects, and activities may be implemented without it being reflected in an investment plan. Meaning, if you would want to say implement a program catering to the reduction of inequality, it should be reflected primarily in your investment plan. So that's how the hierarchy of plans work in the Philippines. So this one is an example of the lowest, not the lowest, of the basis of what plans and programs to be reflected in both physical as well as socio-economic development plan. Although it's quite small on your screens, this is how it is formulated. You will see some services, general public services, social services, economic and environmental services, which should be properly reflected on an annual investment plan of a local government unit. Again, I would reiterate that LGUs or local government units or the political subdivisions here in the Philippines are those of provinces, municipalities, you have cities as well as the barangays. But in this case, our discussion will be up until municipality only. And then to advance the Philippine development plans as well as the regional development plans, LGUs should be able to realize the following goals or aims. Specifically, for the socio-economic progress of the region, there should be an inclusive development of the country. So this regional development plans were launched in the country in 2017. So this is to be attained up until 2022. However, through different assessment, we see some problems in the attainment of such because of the different crises country has as well as LGUs were facing at the moment. So nevertheless, these are the aims of the Philippine development plans as well as the regional development plans. First is to raise awareness and advocate support for the plans gearing toward Ambition 2040 and the Sustainable Agenda 2030. Adopt the perspectives of Ambition Natin 2040 and Agenda 2030 And plans should be aligned of development plans, implement programs, plans, and activities to achieve targets in the plans, and to always conduct regular monitoring. To be able to achieve or adopt the perspectives of Ambition 2040 and Agenda 2030 in development planning, both the national and the local government must work together and should be in sync. So there should be policies, programs, and projects that increase the opportunities for individuals as well as families so that they will be able to enjoy a strongly rooted, a comfortable, as well as a secured life. Also, LGUs as well as the national government should think of strategies to ensure that the benefits will be felt by the marginalized and disadvantaged sectors. Most often than not, these marginalized and disadvantaged sectors, as how you would call them, are the ones left behind with the leaving no one behind motto of the SDGs. This is one of the most problematic agenda or goal that is set for countries to be able to address too. Also, they need to be able to think of strategies to ensure that the benefits will be felt across generations over the long term. So that is Ambition 2040. This ambition or vision states that by 2040, the Philippines will be a prosperous, predominantly middle-class society where no one is poor. Our people will live long and healthy lives, be smart and innovative, and will live in a high-trust society. Now, how can LGUs contribute on these visions of the countries as well as in achievement of the SDGs? Since the issuance of Executive Order number 27 directs all government agencies as well as instrumentalities in both the national and local levels, they should be able to align plans as well as programs with the PDP, and this should imply that the national and local governments is working towards a common goal. So here are some of the mandates as well as efforts of the LGUs in the attainment of PDPs as well as SDGs. So one is malasakit. Malasakit is a term which means concern. Malasakit or enhancing the social fabric. It's one of the pillars that is presented earlier in the National Development Framework Plan. So one, to ensure or to enhance the social fabric, there is a need for both the national government as well as the local government to ensure a people-centered, clean, and efficient governance. So first, we already have the ARTA or the Anti-Red Tape Authority, which seeks to make sure that there is accountability in terms of the performance of the different functionaries within the government. So LGUs being in the forefront of service delivery, they play a big role in showing that the government has malasakit or concern among its people. So the aim is to be able to regain the people's trust in public institutions and cultivate trust as well as in among Filipinos. For instance, local government should be able to continue to review, simplify, as well as modernize its regulations, making it easier and less costly to transact with government. One of the problems of the government is that there is duplication of processes, which leads to people dealing with fixers so as they will be able to have an easier transaction with the government, which is now prohibited because we have also already now the anti-fixer law in the country. But nevertheless, LGUs must be able to think of ways on how it will make transactions easier so as it will be more accountable as well and it will be less costly on the part of the people. Second is productivity improvements will be pursued to provide timely and responsive government citizens. Performance excellence will boost citizen trust in government. Now we have in the delivery of local services, the Citizen Charter. Now in the Philippines, the Citizen Charter is the guide of Filipinos or people who needs to transact in the government to the amount of minutes they need to be able to wait to process their requests. So there's no need for under the table transactions. There's no need to have someone inside, just so your process will be faster or easier. Again, these goals are aligned with those of the Philippine development plans that is also tied with our SDGs as reflected earlier. And then LGU should be able to promote also public awareness of anti-corruption drives through different processes or systems. So one that could be done is what is already being done by some of our localities here, and that is the good governance drive or good governance seminar, where the Department of Interior and Local Government goes to different barangays or different LGUs and have a convention on how to conduct good governance. So not only do they invite public officials or local officials, but they also invite spectators so that they know the different grounds as to when officials are not being accountable to their people. And then the next is to also have an enhanced social fabric. There is a need to pursue a swift and fair administration of justice. So LGUs are highly encouraged to establish justice zones or justice hubs. So to gain people's trust in public institutions, justice hubs are encouraged to be established. So these hubs is planned to serve as a one-stop shop, parang one-stop venue for criminal justice. So basically, you're gonna put up a center or a venue to where we could have these justice zones or justice hubs. And then another is to promote Philippine culture and awareness. So local governments can provide the needed resources to ensure the preservation as well as the development of Philippine culture and the exploration and understanding of Philippine history. In addition, local governments can support community initiatives to include culture in their local development plans. So in these cases, LGUs now are trying to form different offices related to the enhancement of culture as well as different avenues on how they will be able to preserve as well as develop their local as well as the Philippine culture. So there is this mandate that when LGUs have the capacity, they can create a municipal tourism officer, a municipal information officer, or a information officer or a tourism officer in their locality, so as they will be able to address concerns relevant to the promotion of Philippine culture and awareness. Then we have the different bedrock strategies. These are ones which are fundamental also in ensuring the attainment of the Philippine development plans as well as the sustainable development goals. So one is ensure peace and security. This particular strategy pertains to ensuring that peace and security as well as infrastructure development, safety and resilience, and ecological integrity and a clean and healthy environment is always kept and prioritized by the LGU. So to ensure this, LGUs can collaborate with the national government to undertake a development approach that promotes peace and is also sensitive to conflict, to culture and as well as gender, so that they will be able to empower our communities as well as address these issues of peace. So police community partnerships are now being also highly encouraged among different LGUs and communities. So if you have in our country, we have this Crime Citizens Watch, we have the Guardians, different organizations that are highly encouraged by the local government to join in them in collaboration in maintaining peace and security within their jurisdiction. So that's one of the strategies as well as efforts of LGU in maintaining peace and security within their jurisdiction. Then accelerating strategic infrastructure development. LGUs as well as different agencies need to take on more responsibility as well as accountability for traffic and public transport outcomes. Local governments are also encouraged to collaborate with different clusters as well as different organizations for common solid waste management, as well as facilities and services. Now, most LGUs in the Philippines have been encountering problems in terms of solid waste management as our laws have been strictly implemented. So no more open dump sites, no more places where you can pollute the air, the water. So now LGUs are also strictly mandated to be able to have sanitary landfills if they can't provide for one, so they need to be able to enter into different MOA or memorandum of agreement, so as there will be a hauling company that will go around their territory so as to collect garbage and garbage to provide a healthy environment and sanitation. So they need to pay for hauling services who will take care of their solid waste. And this one is very much strictly provided. So it's also one of the efforts LGUs try to settle, try to manage. So that's one as well. And then traffic and public transport. So it's one also that is given high prioritization, as now we see the mobility of people from left and right, because there is a need for us to dwell on our daily living. And so traffic, there is congestion of cars. And so our ways, our public works as well as highways also encourages LGUs to be able to devise implementations, laws, and regulations that will ease the public in their transport as well as traffic. And then third is ensuring ecological integrity, clean and healthy environment. This is one of the more important foundation that supports our three main pillars. Again, this is concern, reform, and continuous progress. So we need to be able to strengthen in the Philippines the partnership between land-related agencies as well as LGUs in the formulation of their CLUP or CLUP stands for Comprehensive Land Use Planning and Zoning of Residential Areas. So this one is very important. CLUP, this is one that is required to be submitted every 5 years among LGUs, because in here, it will be a testament to how well an LGU manages his or her its jurisdiction, because it oversees how lands will be utilized by its people as well as investors coming in their territory. So there is a need for a very good land use planning, so as you will be able to separate which is commercial, which is residential, which is agricultural. Plus, there is a law that needed to be followed, which maintains the amount of agricultural lands that had to be preserved by an LGU. Then, Of course, LGUs should be able to enforce stricter local laws, policies, and plans that shall be pursued against illegal as well as unreported extractive as well as fishing activities. Adopt business continuity practices to minimize service disruption during disasters. So LGUs should also be capacitated in addressing and adapting to climate change as well as disaster risk reduction. So one of the efforts pertaining to this of the LGU will be highlighted later on. Then we move on to the third pillar, which is pagbabago, or the second one, pagbabago. This means reform or transformation of or change. So this is focused on reducing inequality. First is the LGU need to be able to participate and participate in simplifying rules and regulations in terms on business registration and licensing, entry and exit, paying taxes, and access to finance. So similarly, just like earlier, to make governance more accountable, so LGUs are advised to simplify their rules and regulations so as red tape as well as under the table transactions will be limited if not completely eradicated. Second, there is a need to improve access to innovative financing and enhance capacity to adapt better and new technologies. So LGUs now are also highly encouraged in the Philippines to engage into a computer system in terms of paying for basic necessities or their offered services. Say, for example, rental expenses in terms of their market, rental stalls, payment for water consumption. So these are all LGUs are now all highly encouraged to computerize their system so as they will be able to adapt to the changes and so minimize also graft as well as corruption and red tape in transacting business with the local government. Likewise, LGUs are highly encouraged to to think of ways and means on how they will be able to grow different businesses within their territorial jurisdiction, yung mga startup, including startup businesses, small businesses or enterprises, and so on and so forth. So that's one also of the mandates of the national government. Now, LGU can also increase access to economic opportunities by providing sufficient information on different acceleration of human capital development. So LGUs must be able to provide quality nutrition, health, and education services. This I'll give emphasis also later on because of some of the examples that I'll be giving. But LGUs or the Philippine government intends for a unitary form of government because not everyone is reached by the national government, more specifically in the delivery of basic services. So it needed LGUs to be able to gather the data as well as deliver the services it cannot to the grassroots or to the most marginalized community as well as sector. So it is one of the priority of the national government that LGUs must give priorities to ensure that nutrition, health, and education services are not only accessible but are also available. Then advance local health policies, specifically now that we are in the midst of a pandemic. Our health policies, specifically the LGUs, have been challenged. And so although we were surprised by its coming, I'd like to think that we are able to establish protocols as well as we have finally have had a better response system that addresses different issues in terms of health policies or services and commodities relevant to that. Also, there should be an enhancement of emergency employment programs such as community-based employment programs. One of the reasons why LGUs are given the capacity to collect or to impose taxes is for them to be able to think of programs on how they will give it back to their community. And so thinking of livelihood programs, thinking of how they would assist their community in terms of having health accessibility or health services accessibility and those that are similarly related to that. Then reduce vulnerability of individuals and build up socioeconomic resiliency. So to reduce vulnerabilities of individuals as well as communities against, say, natural hazards, the local community can participate in the conduct of vulnerability and risk assessment. So it's one also of our core sustainable development goals. In here, LGUs, just like what was mentioned, try to always conduct measures as well as seminars in the form of seminars, in the form of conventions on how they will be able to assess as well as address different vulnerabilities and risks. So local officials and local functionaries like your health workers, barangay police are given special trainings so as when time comes or catastrophe or any vulnerability comes, we at least they will be able to handle such situation. Now, in addressing governance and political risks, LGU must be able to establish a protocol on monitoring, reporting, and response system to respond to all cases of grave child rights violations in situations of armed conflict. Now, in this case, LGUs are mandated also to have policies as well as laws and regulations pertaining to children's protection. LGUs at the end of every fiscal year or at the end of every whole term, there is this application for a seal of local governance. So this seal of local governance has set of metrics. This matrices or those measurements or categories are divided into different criteria. Those criteria fall under those which are enumerated under PDP that are tied with the Sustainable Development Goals, and one of which is child protection. Included in there also is quality of education, social services, poverty, so reduced inequalities, meaning LGUs are given not only the directive but also the guidelines on how they will be able to govern with accountability as well as with responsibility by being able to comply with what is enumerated as well as provided under the Philippine Development Plans, which again are tied in our SDGs. So similarly, these particular programs that are being mentioned, universal social protection, secure and safe communities, decentralization of housing and urban development efforts, accessibility of education, accessibility of health, they are all in that particular rating, which will assess how LGUs respond to the development plans set by the national government in with the basis on the Sustainable Development Goals. So here are some of the programs of the national government and LGUs in the attainment of SDGs. The ones that I've mentioned are more of the generalized programs that most LGUs have. But for the past years, these are some of the programs that have been felt as well as utilized by the members of the community. So one is the CBMS, or the community-based monitoring system, so that SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, will be localized. Leaving no one behind requires data on the different dimensions of poverty for the same household at the same time. CBMS is approved on April 17, 2019 under Republic Act number 11315. So CBMS is one that is an organized technology-based system of collecting, processing, and validating necessary disaggregated data that may be used for planning, program implementation, and impact monitoring at the local level, while empowering communities to participate in the process. Now, CBMS have different measures, have different measurements. It has different dimensions. To give you an example, these are some of the core indicators that are included in CBMS. So this tries to measure the needs, this tries to assess the needs, the problems, and how poor is the community or the locality. In this case, the CBMS is very much useful among different LGUs because its results are the basis of the would-be plans, programs, and activities that will be included in the investment planning as well as development planning of such LGU. Of course, in association or in alignment with that of the national. So to present some of specific programs intended to address several problems that is a result of the conduct of CBMS, allow me to talk about my municipality, which is the municipality of San Pascual, Batangas, here in the 2nd District of Region 4A of the Philippines. Although it was not mentioned earlier, you might wonder why I am having this particular municipality. I also am a serving public officer of the municipality, to which I authored this ordinance institutionalizing the San Pascual Scholarship Program. You will see that I associated this one in reducing inequality and not with quality education. It is because this ordinance ensures that no person shall be deprived of the benefits of education on the account of poverty, and therefore contribute to the social and economic development of the nation. This also promotes inclusivity as it provides educational schemes on the following sectors. We have schemes for PWD, schemes for solo parents, and schemes for out-of-school youths. So most of these are the disadvantaged sectors that do not have specific provisions in different legislations in terms of scholarship or educational assistance programs. That's why I associated it with Goal 10, which is reduced inequalities. In this particular legislation, which emanates from a CBMS result of the quality of education, as well as the lack of aid coming or assistance coming from the locality or the LGU, we decided to devise a particular legislation that shall regulate the amount of monetary allocation the municipality will have in terms of education and the sectors that it will cater to. So not only those students in K-12 program, and not only in the tertiary level, but also those specific sectors who intends to pursue K-12 as well as collegiate or baccalaureate degree. So again,
Manalo, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
It seems that you have a limited time to finish your lecture because we are running out of time. Thank you, people.
Okay. I'm about to wrap it up anyways. This is one of the, I think, last 3 slides. Can I finish it? Rainy?
Okay.
Okay,
Go on.
so thank you very much. So that's one. And then the other one that is a result of CBMS is the lack of assistance they receive in terms of medical as well as financial. So what the municipality did is from 1.9, sorry for that typographical error, we up it to 3 million pesos. So that's CBMS. And then we also have 4Ps. This 4Ps is a conditional cash transfer program. So this ensures to meet goals 1 as well as 2, and then health and quality education, as this gives cash to families who have children going in school. But the condition in here is that they need to be able to attend regularly their classes and perform well, so as they would be able to maintain the assistance that they would get from the government. So LGUs are the ones also identifying the beneficiaries. And then last are the mandatory budget allocations. Also shows the efforts of LGUs in ensuring that global goals are met. So you have, for disaster risk reduction, you have a percentage required for gender and development, for the protection of children, and for senior citizens. So where do we go from here? At the end, to truly move forward is to leave no one behind. And to leave no one behind is to sometimes sacrifice what you want so that others will have what they need. And to live with you is a challenge that in this very chaotic world and in this very demanding world, we need to always be able to become the testament of the things we would want to see, of the change we would want to have in this world. Thank you all very much for being patient with me. It was a long presentation. Then again, thank you for listening. Maraming salamat. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Manalo, for deliver the great explanation about SDGs 10, reduce inequalities. So now I want to invite the participants who want to ask or deliver the question to the Miss Lanifel Manalo. Is there anyone who wants to ask directly to Miss Lanifel Manalo? Okay. Okay. So I have to read the question in the link. Hello, on the bedrock strategies on the answer ecological integrity, clean and healthy environment point mentioned that formulate CLUP and zoning of residential areas to improve land administration and management. Can you explain what the CLUP is and how it works? Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the question. Again, CLUP stands for Comprehensive Land Use Plan. So this is the basis of local government units on how they will be able to utilize their lands. They will be assigning zones where it will be commercial, where it will be residential, and where it will be agricultural, or where are the places where agricultural lands can be reclassified into commercial lands, meaning lands that may be used or may be utilized by investors, bought or rented for a particular business or investment. In this case, if lands are not classified according, or if lands are not used according to its classification, there is a need for the locality to regulate such, and to be able to adjust and to, according to law, make the person using it adjust it to how he wants it to be used. It is important because it will reflect how great of a planning the LGU have in also providing spaces where business establishments may be established or erected, so that investments will be coming, and so that job opportunities will be coming as well. So that is CLUP. It's Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Each locality in our country should be able to submit this to the provincial government for approval as well as for validation.
Okay, thank you, Miss Lanifel Manalo, for your explanation. And there is one more question. It written there's a lot of gap in developing countries, such as a social and economic gap. It could be challenging, especially in the pandemic era, because a lot of countries struggling about the economic, and it causing a lot of people lost their job. So, how is in the Philippines how to handle the social and economic gap in the pandemic era?
It has been very challenging, I would say. Many many of you might have read from the news how we have handled the situation, not just the socio-economic gap, but health itself, or the pandemic itself. It has been very challenging. But in the municipality, I'm talking of the municipality, for our policies, we devised a legislation where we require industries to hire only locals within their industry up to 70%. So it's one of the ways we thought of to be able to address some economic as well as social gaps during this time of pandemic. But in the case of the national government, there are also assistance they provided, especially for those who lost their jobs. And there are amelioration programs. There are also different assistance. Although others would say it isn't enough, but I'd like to positively think that there were still measures that aided and have bridged the gap during the pandemic, although not really permanently but temporarily.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. And like I mentioned before, unfortunately, we have a limited times because I believe there is a lot of question have to discuss for a lot of question from participant have to discuss with you. But yeah, we're running out of time in here, and we hope we can discuss in another agenda. Okay, thank you very much, Miss Lanifel Manalo, for the excellent lecture for today. Please give applause to our speakers by using the Zoom reaction feature. Okay, thank you very much. Furthermore, we would like to present a certificate awarding to Miss Lanifel Manalo. Committee, okay. And this is certificate for Miss Lanifel Manalo. We will send the soft file version of the certificate the sooner in the future, and we will also send it to your postal address. Once again, thank you very much for our speakers today for your valuable time and contribution on today's guest lecture series. We believe that your lecture is beneficial for all participants in understanding sustainable development goals, especially gender equality and race inequality. Now, before we end off our lecture today, we invite all participants as well as the honorable speaker to take a group photo. So, we invite and request to all participants to turn on the camera. Okay, we will wait just for a while until all the participants open the camera. And the committee, do you ready to capture the moment, our moment for today? Okay, I will count in 1, 2, 3, and the next slide. 1, 2, 3, and the next slide. 1, 2, 3. Next slide. 1, 2, 3, and The last slide is 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Now we finish the group photo. And the participant, please fill the feedback form through the link bit.ly/GLS_feedback that you can also see on the Zoom chat room. Please be reminded that the participant who will get the stamp are participants who come on time, join this event until the end, and also fill the feedback form. And for the next week, on Tuesday, we will hold on next week, we will hold 8 interesting topics in 3 different streams. On Tuesday, we have SDGs on clean water and sanitation with Associate Professor Lyson On from University Tunku Abdul Rahman, and SDGs on life below water that will be delivered by Professor Ernesto Del Rosario from Mariano Marcos State University. On Wednesday, SDGs on affordable and clean energy with Dr. Sompon Choi Ari from Prince Songkla University, and SDGs on climate action with Professor Subimal Ghosh. And the topic is global and regional climate change impacts and adaptation. And also we have one more speaker, Dr. Siba Chenoli, with the topic of unbundling climate crisis and climate action. And the last, on the Thursday, we have SDGs on industry, innovation, and infrastructure that will be delivered by Professor Kenji Mishima from Fukuoka University, and SDGs on sustainable cities and communities with Dr. Maria Rosaria Gracia. The topic is asset consumption in Philippines, a mixed method study on its socio-economic implication and insight. And Assistant Professor Rekeleko with the topic, a study on the factor influencing disaster resiliency, Barangay San Vicente in context. Finally, we have reached the end of today's guest lecture series. Once again, thank you very much to our honorable speakers and all participants for the attention and cooperation. We hope to see you in the next agenda. Don't forget to follow our social media on Instagram at ITS International Office and Facebook at ITS International Office, and keep updated of our program. Stay safe, stay healthy, and please enjoy the rest of the evening. Goodbye and see you next week. Thank you. And I will end this session in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Goodbye, everyone. Stay safe.